Hi guys, thank you for joining today's webinar. We're going to get going in the next 2 to 3 minutes. Thank you. Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Desktop as a Service, a single solution for remote access, business continuity and security challenges. I'd like to welcome you all to this week's webinar as we explore the benefits of Windows Virtual Desktop and the world of Desktop as a Service. I'm going to be your host today. My name is Peter Hunt. I'm the head of marketing here at ActionPoint. I'll introduce our speaker in just a little bit. This webinar is part of a series of our remote working and remote management webinars. And really what we're finding is as people are more settled into a new way of working, as you will, it creates business continuity, security, and access challenges. So the timeliness of this webinar is very, very important. So far over the last few weeks, we've had quite a number of attendees. So we really feel this is a topic that's beneficial to our client base. I'm going to just introduce, before I introduce you to today's speaker, I'm just going to run a quick poll. If you could just have a look at the poll there on screen and just give us an answer to the question. What is the biggest challenge you've experienced in delivering effective remote access to your team at short notice? Please select one of the following: additional costs, increased IT support demand from end users, security concerns, poor performance, or inability of existing infrastructure to scale to demand. So that poll is up there. I'm going to give it about 30 seconds. So if you can just answer that question, it'll make for some interesting feedback as we continue through the webinar. Before while you're doing the poll, I'm just going to introduce today's speaker. Philly Nally has been working in the technology industry for 15 years now. He leads the Microsoft practice at ActionPoint and works across our Azure and modern workplace technologies. He supports our customers and supports our sales and marketing efforts as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to today's speaker, Philly Nally.
Thanks very much, Peter. Thanks for that intro. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Desktop as a Service, a single solution for remote access, business continuity, and security challenges. So we're going to discuss a few areas today. I'm going to briefly go over some of the remote working challenges. I'm sure many of you have experienced some of this over the last number of weeks, but I suppose this takes into account the conversations that we've been having across multiple sectors, not only over the last few weeks, but all over the last number of years as well, and some of the key challenges we're seeing there. We'll then go into a quick overview of Windows Virtual Desktop, talk about some of the key scenarios as to where this fits in and where you would use Windows Virtual Desktop. We'll then move into a demo to show you it in action, which will be quite quick. And lastly, we'll get under the hood and get a little bit more technical and do a bit of a deeper dive on what separates Windows Virtual Desktop from some of the competitors and some of the traditional solutions that you may be used to. We'll have Q&A throughout, so if you do have any questions, put them in the question box in the GoToWebinar tab there. We'll do a Q&A at the end and aim to answer them. So whatever queries you have, please feel free to enter them throughout the webinar. So in thinking about today and where we are today, if we really break it down, fundamentally, what are we trying to do? Ultimately, we're trying to deliver apps and data to our end users. We want to give our end users the ability to do their job, no matter where they are, no matter what time of day it is, no matter what device they're on. Quite simple when you say it like that, be it someone in marketing, someone in finance, or someone in engineering. We just want them to get them the apps and the data that they want whenever they want it. With ease, they want their experience to be good, and they want to work effectively. But often we find in order to deliver that for a lot of organizations, today actually looks very different from an IT point of view. We're dealing with platforms that are just good enough. We have a lot of legacy back office systems. There's a question mark over our technology strategy and how that has really evolved, not only given what's gone on over the last couple of months, but also given key budget constraints, given direction of our organization, and the legacy backload of all those other systems and equipment that are there. And as well as that, we're dealing with a lot of new fragmentation. People are working differently. Their expectation is much different to a number of years ago. And we're trying to introduce consistently introduce new solutions to share data to help people work more effectively. But at the same time, that's introducing fragmentation. I think a lot of that has been compounded by this approach to remote working. Many businesses have had to deliver remote working in 60 seconds. Some have gone from maybe 0% remote working to 100%. In other words, not having any infrastructure, not having any strategy for remote working. And the solution to that often has been, well, if we give people a laptop and a VPN solution, they're good. They're set up for remote working. And even many organizations that have been set up for remote working, often that has been limited by scale and capacity. So again, they're faced with a scenario of, well, actually our critical infrastructure that delivers our remote access solution has maxed out. And now we need to go down the same route of shipping out laptops and setting up more VPN solutions. And that's our remote working solution done. But when we did that, or when we considered that and ultimately said to the leaders in the business, yes, we have remote working enabled, everyone is able to work now, the problem is solved. The reality was we left a lot of open questions. The first one, what about our end user experience? In our remote working solution, both the short term and maybe the one we've had for a long time now, when have we actually considered our end user experience? Are we delivering a cumbersome connection process? A sluggish VPN process that I have to have tokens and I have to remember different username and passwords? Are users using different equipment? So they come into the office and they've got 2 monitors and they've got a great desk space, and then they go home and they're working off a 14-inch laptop or a tablet or some device that really doesn't give them the same approach. Are our applications slow? Do they struggle to work over our VPN connections? Yes, I can work from home, but I can actually only use 50% of my applications. Therefore, my performance is gradually going down over time. And maybe even applications aren't available. They work some days, they don't work other days. So my performance as an end user is dropping because the experience I've been given as part of my remote access solution just really isn't up to scratch. The other question is, what about security and business risk? Often, we've introduced that remote access, but we haven't built in, best practice security. Single factor authentication is still in play for a lot of people. Some people say, well, yes, we have a VPN solution that makes it secure, but if we're still operating in a single factor authentication world, we're not really improving security. People are now working on their home networks. We've no idea what else is going on that home network. We relied so much on our office premises and the secure firewall and security we built into our premises. But now that people are out in the wild, working from home and working from any location, that same security rule and profile doesn't apply. We also don't know where our corporate data is. what are people actually doing now that they're working remotely? Are they able to move that data around? Are they finding that sharing data with their colleagues or with their business partners is difficult? And are they starting to introduce shadow IT or new services in that, we no longer have any visibility over? Maybe someone's using their Gmail account to send information to their colleagues because it's much, much quicker than going the cumbersome approach that we've delivered to them from an IT point of view. And also, what about scale? I think a lot of businesses have been really challenged by this ability to scale out. How we've maxed out our capacity on our existing infrastructure, how we've realized that now we have a number of single points of failure, and how the cost of that scale has increased dramatically, the capital cost of equipment, and also the more softer costs, the management of people, the expectation that people have, and the fundamental cost to our help desk, because people are having trouble connecting in, they're having issues on a consistent basis. And with the benefit of hindsight, some people have said, well, why didn't we consider this going back a number of years ago? Why didn't we invest previously? The reality is that there wasn't too many options available. The traditional option of going down a VDI solution, often took a long lead time, was incredibly expensive, had limited flexibility insofar as we needed to plan a VDI solution for our workforce, not only for today, but also into the next 5 years, which means we've got a lot of excess capacity just sitting there unused. And from a management support and day-to-day operations point of view, the overhead is huge from a VDI solutions. So although hindsight would say, well, we should have had a VDI solution, that simply wasn't reality. It simply wouldn't have worked for the business, it wouldn't have been cost effective, and it would have been a bad investment at the time. Likewise, modernized applications, if we want to deliver modern applications that are highly available, that are available through a web browser for an end user, is a great idea, and it's, I suppose, a modern way of looking at applications. But that too has a price point. How much are we going to invest, not only in terms of a development cost, but also in terms of a planning and expertise cost in refactoring and redeveloping our applications. And fundamentally, again, when we looked at that in the context of our yearly IT budget, it just wasn't reality, and maybe still isn't reality to modernize our applications. So in these scenarios, this is where Windows Virtual Desktop comes in. Windows Virtual Desktop is a single solution that delivers all our applications, all our data centrally via the cloud, and allows our users to get the same experience regardless of where they are and regardless of what device they're on. If my user is running Windows 10 and has an expectation of running a Windows 10 environment, that's what they're getting. This isn't a Windows Server environment reskinned. This is a Windows 10 solution fully delivered to my end users. It allows me to deliver all my apps, be it legacy apps or be it modern apps, all my data, be it network shares or OneDrive data or SharePoint data, wherever that data resides, to my end users in an extremely secure and efficient fashion. So again, going back to the point, the end user is getting the consistent experience regardless of where they are. From a business point of view, we have the same security profile regardless of where our end users are connecting from or what they're working on. We're dramatically reducing our business risk, and we're building in that ability to scale. So in other words, we can start with a small set of users or a small set of applications, and when we need to adapt rapidly, be it that we have to go full remote access again or full remote working, or maybe we need to bring on a new business, we have that ability to scale rapidly and increase the number of users using our system. And if we look at that, and we'll go into this demo in a little bit more detail in a while, simply put, what we're doing is we're delivering our apps and our data. So the end user experience is, I need to access my key line of business applications, obviously my standard ones, my Word, Excel, Outlook, etc. But maybe I need to access my payroll, my accounts package, my CRM system, and I also need to access our 5 different network shares that I'm added to, and I need to open all that data very, very rapidly. Windows Virtual Desktop delivers that seamlessly for the end user. It eliminates those needs for complicated VPN connections, which most end users hate, which IT hate management, and create not only a cost overhead, but also a productivity overhead. We're also giving an end user a standard Windows 10 experience. It is a standard Windows 10 because it is Windows 10. All data and applications are available at any time, and security is built in, not added on. Windows Virtual Desktop delivers the best virtualization experience. And what does that actually mean? It means a number of things. So it means any device. So I can connect in from any device, be it the laptop that I've been given to work remotely with, be it my mobile device, be it my tablet, even be it my thin client I can work remotely with, or I can access Windows Virtual Desktop with. So that means when I'm working from home, I have full access. When I go back into the office and I'm working on my desktop with my multi-screen environment, I have the exact same full access. If I, in a couple of months' time, when business returns to semi-normality, need to take a flight to meet new clients or meet new people overseas, I can use my tablet and I can get the exact same experience from my tablet, from my phone. I can access all the applications that I need to. I'm able to use enhanced protocol and enhanced securities in there. So in other words, I'm getting a system that delivers dynamic bandwidth that leverages new technologies for security, like Windows Hello for Business. But I'm also getting all of those enhancements that previously weren't there before. And I'll talk about them in a little more detail in a while. Enhancements such as containerized profiles, built-in support for Office 365, and also built-in support for Microsoft Teams as well. So where would you use this? What are the key scenarios and why would you want to adopt Windows Virtual Desktop and Desktop as a Service? So some of the key ones we see are legacy applications, the management and delivery of applications. We see this so often that a business has a given line of business applications. Maybe it's something to do with payroll, maybe it's accounts, and maybe it's an ERP system. But once a quarter or once a year, that application needs to be updated. The latest patches have come out, the latest versions are coming out. And we need to update our back-end infrastructure. We need to schedule some downtime. Maybe we then, through a group policy or even a manual approach, need to go around to many of our users and upgrade that application. And often we get feedback that, okay, that is time consuming. Some users weren't available to get that upgrade done. Others had their devices switched it off. And it takes a long time to get that application to the latest version of that application. But not only updating applications, also rolling out some key line of business applications also demand that same involved process. I configure my back-end systems, I configure group policy, and maybe then I have to go out to many users because there's compatibility issues. Or it turns out this application needs more RAM than most of our users have in their laptops or desktops. Or it needs some type of new CPU, or it has some other nuance that is pulling resources and ultimately making our system slow. So then we're down a scenario of saying, well, actually, do we need to refresh our client environment, send out new laptops, give new devices? All of a sudden, the cost of upgrading this laptop has not only increased from an IT time point of view, but also user downtime and a fundamental CapEx cost for equipment. Ultimately, that's a challenge that most businesses face. And with Windows Virtual Desktop, the bulk of that is actually eliminated. What we're able to do is set up our image very easily and say, well, actually, we have an upgrade. Well, let's do this upgrade in a sandbox environment. Number one, does the upgrade actually work? Is it going to cause any issues? How do we deliver that? Number two, as we want to push that out to that application out to the end users, we're not installing anything locally. We're installing and managing centrally. So we can choose to push that application out to a subset of users and say, well, hey, not only are you able to access the new version of the application, but for everyone, we're still giving the old version of application. So in parallel, you can access both versions of the applications. You can give us feedback. You can give us insight into testing. Is it working properly? Is it doing everything it's supposed to do? But it also gives us the opportunity to look at maybe new risk that those applications have introduced. Maybe there's some new features that we weren't aware of before, file sharing features, data sharing features we didn't know existed. If we think about how that application would have been installed locally on an end user system, that would have introduced a lot of complexity and a lot of challenges that maybe we had to roll back on. By containerizing this app and putting this application in Windows Virtual Desktop, we're able to control that very effectively. We're able to control what's actually going on, where people are sharing, what people are doing with the app. So in other words, we're minimizing the rollout effort. We're making it very simple to roll out and to update applications, making it easier for the end users. And regardless of the requirements of that application, extra RAM, CPU, disk space, the same client works. From the end user point of view, they have the same client, the same desktop, laptop, tablet, etc. The application continues to work because it's centrally delivered. So we're eliminating many of those challenges from a legacy application point of view. Also, in terms of the delivery of that, we're making sure we're giving that consistent experience. So our end users now have an expectation that I'm running my CRM system or my ERP system or whatever type of in-house system I'm running. I have an expectation as to how that will run. But using Windows Virtual Desktop, that experience is guaranteed regardless of what device they're on. It is always consistent. So if a certain user said, well, actually, at the end of the month, I need to run a large report or a large operation, and typically my laptop or my device gets very sluggish when I run this. what we're able to do is scale that and scale things effectively behind the scenes to say, well, actually, at the end of the month, we're going to allocate that user more resources. We're going to give them more oomph so that their expectation is when the report runs, it's going to take minutes rather than hours, rather than days. So we're able to get control over things, but centrally get control. We no longer care almost about what's on the end client systems. And likewise, like I've said already, we're able to give that consistent experience. So regardless of which device the user is on, large or small, the Windows 10 experience is delivered to them all the time. The other scenario we see around this is around business continuity. A lot of businesses would put time and effort into testing their DR and do their servers replicate, do their servers fail over okay, but often the missing link in that is the actual end user consideration. It's well and good we may be able to fail over our servers to the cloud or to some other destination, but how do our end users go about accessing that? What happens if our building is no longer accessible and we have half our staff back working in our key building? Some of our staff are working remotely, but they're all connecting into our firewall, which sits in our main HQ. What happens when that building is out of action? Our servers have replicated into our cloud DR site, but now no one is able to access anything because our infrastructure, our VPN, our remote access infrastructure is gone. By using Windows Virtual Desktop, we're able to do something called a cloud hot site. So what we're able to say is we have a Windows Virtual Desktop environment on standby. When we invoke our DR, our end users simply access that Windows Virtual Desktop environment, which scales up on demand. So regardless of what the scenario is from a DR point of view, be it the building's out of action or be it critical infrastructure is out of action, we're able to deliver that same experience to the end user. Here is how you connect in, regardless of where you are, regardless of what device you're on. We are giving you access to all of your applications and all of your data centrally. When our DR event is over and when things return to normal, we can instantly scale back and bring that back down. So scale our Windows Virtual Desktop right back down to almost zero. Our end users are back in the office. Our servers have failed back to the traditional on-premise infrastructure that was there before, and people work away business as usual. But what's interesting about this and the conversation that we're having, people almost see this as a stepping stone to say, well, actually, if we normalize our business continuity, as well as enhancing our whole DR strategy, well, maybe this is the stepping stone rather than saying, right, this event only happens once in a blue moon, is that this becomes a permanent event that we say, well, actually, this is the opportunity to move everyone into Windows Virtual Desktop. Windows Virtual Desktop also, I suppose, helps address a lot of different specific needs, and depending on your business or your organization, many of these may be applicable almost the same as those other areas I spoke about a few minutes ago. So, if you're in a safety and regulated environment, be it financial services, government, or healthcare, and you want to be super sensitive about your data, about where that data goes, how it leaves, what applications people use, and where they use them, Windows Virtual Desktop gives you that ability to say, well, actually, I definitively know that my data can't leave this environment. It is locked into it, and I have all the security that I should have and more around that environment. Likewise, if we have an elastic workforce, in the current climate, many businesses are looking at maybe scaling back their operations. Some are looking to actually scale up their operations and acquire new businesses. With Windows Virtual Desktop, we have the ability to do that. We're no longer bought into an environment that is has capacity for 1,000 users or 100 users. We have an environment that is right size for us. And if we need to add more people to that, or if we need to scale down, maybe we need to increase people over the summer for call center or something like that, we can very, very efficiently do that and control that down to almost the minute by minute level of that. Likewise, if we have specific employees that we want to give access to certain key systems, be it that now we need to set up new branch operations in different locations, and now we want to deliver that legacy line of business application or that key business application to them, we can easily do that and say, well, actually, here is that key business application, which previously was cumbersome or difficult or almost impossible to deliver remotely. Now you have access to that in full, regardless of where you are. So we're able to get very, very granular on the control. This isn't an all or nothing scenario. We're able to say, okay, let's pick these key applications because they're hard, they're annoying for the business to do, and deliver them to our end users. And also in terms of specialized workloads, maybe I'm working in a CAD or 3D rendering environment, or even a software dev test where I need some custom apps or custom plugins. Again, Windows Virtual Desktop can address that by saying, well, actually, we can allocate that end user the resource they need, be it a high-end desktop with graphics and video graphics built in or something like that. And we can say, well, actually, in reality, they're not going to be using that 24/7. They might use it once a month, once a week, or for a specific project. So therefore, we can give them access to that type of environment, that type of high-spec environment, very, very easily and very, very quickly. So again, lots of different scenarios to consider, and very much the message there is that Windows Virtual Desktop isn't all or nothing. It allows you to grow with your business and say, well, actually, I'm going to take my first application, this one for a small subset of users or for various other reasons from a pure headache point of view, and I'm able to deliver that very, very effectively. And from there, I can gradually grow. I can add more applications, I can add more data, I can decide how I'm going to grow. So what does that actually look like in action? So if I just very quickly bring up a demo client here. So this is my Windows Virtual Desktop client as it sits on my desktop. From my point of view, any application can be published to me. So I don't need to worry about installing anything. I don't need to worry about downtime on my own laptop. If essentially my IT admin needs to push out a new application to me, I just refresh my screen here and it appears. So we have it set up with a few basic apps right now. So if I want to open my Microsoft Word, my experience is I double click on it and Word opens up just as normal. For me as an end user, Word is there. It sits down in my taskbar as normal. But not only that, it's also here in my start menu. So from an end user experience point of view, it feels like the app is installed locally. It looks like the app is installed locally, when in reality, this application is running in a Windows Virtual Desktop environment. Like say, hey, great, I have Word open. Maybe I need to open up my Windows Explorer that has our company network share. Again, all very, very seamless to me. It appears as though this is working locally when this is fully working in our centralized Windows Virtual Desktop environment with all the security rules around that kind of thing. So I can easily say, yes, I can access my network share, I can access my apps, I can open files just the way I've always wanted to open things, and I can do everything I wanted to do previously. And I've just demoed some of the Office apps. We can go much, much further and say, well, actually, maybe we have a CRM app in here, and maybe for some crazy reason someone needs Microsoft Paint, or maybe it's a graphics application they need. Again, you can see how quickly that is working. I'm double clicking, but this application is in fact running in a data center, in the Microsoft data center in Dublin. So all siloed, all secure, but very, very seamless. And I have the choice here to say, well, actually, I'm just going to run in an application only mode, or I can actually boot up a full Windows 10 desktop and I can go in and have my traditional desktop experience. But what I can also do is I can provide different levels of apps and different levels of desktops for people. So you'll see here, I've got my standard Windows desktop, but I also been allocated a Windows 10 NVIDIA desktop, because at the end of the month, I need to run a highly intensive graphic application or some report that is, very, very CPU heavy, and that graphics gives it the extra oomph. So I've been allocated that, and I have the ability to use that on demand as well. So in this scenario, I may be in different groups, and maybe I'm at a management level, and I'm involved in the finance team, but I'm also involved in the engineering team. I can get different applications streamed to me or delivered to me, different desktops delivered to me with different applications, depending on my needs, depending on my role, and depending on the demand in the business. So again, the control we have from an IT point of view is very, very, very granular. But also, if you think about the end user experience, the experience they're getting to say, well, actually, I need our latest accounts package. I need that installed because I'm new into the accounts team. But it's very, very easy for that to happen now. My remote desktop environment is refreshed, and I can easily work on that seamlessly. So again, I can work away in the remote desktop client here as I've demonstrated. I can run in my start menu as normal as I've demonstrated here, and even I can open up a browser and have that same experience as well. So all of my applications run natively in the browser. Again, that takes away the need for scenarios where I'm running a device that doesn't have a native app installed, a native remote desktop app, but as long as I have a browser, it'll work. I've seen people actually run this on their browser in a Tesla car. So the flexibility that's there from the get-go is just phenomenal. What is also is the ability to, I mentioned that already, is to run it on a mobile device. And we can see just by this quick demo in the video here how easy that is. I simply tap on my remote desktop client, and then I've got my choice to enter into full desktop mode, full Windows 10 desktop, or I can actually open up any application that's been published out to me. So in this scenario here, I needed access to my Microsoft Access. Again, there's no native app for that, so I can easily access that. Again, maybe it's an ERP system, it's a custom application, it's an internal line of business application. I can get access to all of that with ease and very, very seamlessly. I've mentioned security a few times, and it's important to think about security. It's at its core. And I used this slide earlier on in terms of what does today look like. I suppose we often have to ask the same question about what does today look like in terms of where's our data. With all the fragmentation that's in our environment right now, Windows Virtual Desktop addresses that, and it makes sure our data is centralized. It also makes sure our data and our infrastructure is built on a platform that is designed from security. So right now, Microsoft Azure, I think, actually has 60 regions globally, so we can deliver our applications to pretty much anywhere in the world, regardless of where our end users are. We're also building on a platform, or putting our applications and data into a platform that is highly compliant, not only with GDPR and ISO and the various other standards, but across many, many more industry standards at a global level. But not only that, we're working with a solution that has native security built in from the ground up. We're leveraging tools like multi-factor authentication that is built in. We're reducing the surface attack area by not having any ports open. You know, one of the traditional challenges with RDS or many of the previous remote access solutions was we had to open many ports, and they were a clear attack surface for many people to attack our network with. And often we've seen breaches by virtue of people leaving ports open and having poor security on it. With Windows Virtual Desktop, we're simply not opening any ports. It's a reverse inbound connection. And we're also able to have isolated, siloed end user sessions by default. That is the way all the sessions are. They're completely siloed, they're completely isolated. So every user is protected. So we're going from the high level of security at the data center, from the certification that's at the data center, right down into the granular security that is built into the platform, all the way up to our user and our data level. So security is end to end in this. And to go a little bit deeper, and I suppose to give you some overview on a technical sense of what's in the mix here and some of the differentiating points, there's three big pieces to this. First, on the left-hand side is our clients, the devices that we're coming in on. Again, any device, any location. The middle part is the Windows Virtual Desktop service. So that's where our web access, our diagnostics, our licensing, our gateway, all those kind of pieces that in the past were very, very difficult to manage, and maybe we had to build clusters around gateway servers, clusters for our backend SQL server, have multiple brokers in there to manage the connections. All of that right now is delivered as a service. We don't need to think about that. Once the service is provisioned, it scales dynamically as we need it. And where we manage then is we concentrate on managing our applications, our Active Directory, and our desktops. What are the things our end user needs, and deliver them to our end user depending on their role and where they actually are. Like I said, benefits over RDS, much more secure, much more simplified. But I think the four key areas that really stand out for me, over traditional solutions, first and foremost, slow logins and big profiles, and the challenges around session hosts and where does my end user profile sit, as well as that application management and installation, which I mentioned earlier on. File shares, right? Do I need to provision a single server or a file server cluster to actually deliver network shares to our people? And the fundamentals, the basics that people also almost expect now. Video call quality, can I make a Teams call while I'm in my virtualized environment? So Windows Virtual Desktop addresses all of those. First and foremost, the user profile problem. Windows Virtual Desktop uses a technology called FSLogix. And what this does is it containerizes each individual profile. So our Outlook OST, our OneDrive cache, our Windows Search database, and much, much more is all containerized, meaning regardless of where I land, which session host I land on, I'm getting my Windows 10 environment and I'm getting my profile attached to that, ready for me to go. So that means my logon experience is very, very fast. My day-to-day running of my applications is also very fast. And the ability for the business to attach different applications is very, very easy. So you could see that in the demo I did earlier on, where I was double clicking on an application and it opened instantly. The same experience I would have when I'm running locally. It also gives me the ability to do things like Java redirection and have multiple different versions of Java running in my environment. We often see this where businesses are running banking online or some secure application that needs a certain version of Java. And when we go to upgrade that version of Java, we get the phone call back to the help desk to say, hey, this application no longer works because it needs the older version of Java. So with FSLogix built into Windows Virtual Desktop, we're able to control that and give granular versions of the same thing to multiple people at the same time. Roaming profiles and the FSLogix addresses the profile issue, but we also have the application issue. And with App Attach, a feature of Windows Virtual Desktop, we're able to get control over our applications, and we're actually able to put those applications into a containerized environment too. And to say, well, actually, regardless of where our user is, be it a marketing, finance, or engineering users, containerizing their profile, and we're containerizing the apps that they have. So it means that regardless of which session they're on, regardless of where they are, where they're coming in, it feels like to the end user that those applications and that profile is local. That in turn speeds up the running of the application, it speeds up the logins of the application, but it also gives us much more control and the ability to manage things centrally. From a files point of view, we're able to use something called Azure Files. So rather than provisioning a file server cluster and having to worry about the overhead of managing that and the nuances that go in with managing a traditional file server, we're now able to deliver that as a service and say, well, actually, from an end user point of view, your files appear just as a normal network file share, but from an IT point of view, this is platform. We don't need to worry about patching servers, managing servers, protecting servers. It's delivered seamlessly as a platform, as a service. And lastly, on that video redirection. So natively built into Windows Virtual Desktop is the ability to offload that video client. So in other words, rather than the video being transmitted from cloud to your end user, which can cause latency issues, can result in just the video not being optimal, we're able to offload that video locally, and it goes peer-to-peer. So it goes from the end user over to the other user who they're in conversation with. So very, very seamlessly offloads that video, which obviously in turn reduces bandwidth, improves the latency, and just makes for a much, much better experience. So in summary, what do we see today? Back to our original message, our goal is to deliver applications and data to our end user and make it very, very easy for them. Windows Virtual Desktop addresses that. It puts those applications and data securely and centrally in the Windows Virtual Desktop service, and it means our users can access that from anywhere they want. The key scenarios, again, applications, delivering that to any user on any device. The headaches of updates, the headaches of manual updates, the headache even of the fundamental install of many legacy applications, all of that gets eliminated. We're able to deliver not only applications, but also that true full desktop experience. It's Windows 10 to the end user because it is Windows 10. It's not a reskinned Windows Server 2016 or 2019 environment. And it also allows us to address our key business continuity challenges, ensuring that we have a place, that we have a cloud hot site where our end users can access, where they can run all their applications, all their data, regardless of what happens to our physical premises. So next steps, where do you start with this, and where do we recommend you start? For most customers, the first place they start with this is a Windows Virtual Desktop proof of concept, their first application, the first set of users. And right now, we can do that in conjunction with Microsoft. We can offer free Azure. So in other words, the Azure piece costs you nothing for your POC. So please feel free to get in touch with us and talk to us about how we can do your first POC. The other areas that people are starting with is around that business continuity conversation and looking at that cloud hop site. And lastly, people are saying, well, actually, I have a legacy environment. My on-premise environment just no longer cuts it. Let's look at Windows Virtual Desktop and Microsoft 365 and modernizing in full. And with that, in the time we have, I'm going to move it over to questions. If you have any questions or any queries, I know that's been a very quick run through, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Finian. Not a great presentation, and it's interesting to see the content evolve to the current challenges we're experiencing as well. Just a quick point, Finian, if people want to get in touch, do they contact you directly or?
Absolutely. My contact details are on the screen at the moment, so please feel free to contact my email address.
For a second. Yeah, perfect. Great. So yeah, and look, we'll have a follow-up email anyways with some links to our website. So fantastic presentation, Finn. I have a couple of questions, and guys, please do get your questions in. We're here for the next while, so really keen to answer any and all of your questions about the platform. So anything you want to have there, just stick it into the questions box and we'll get to them. Just want to wait for a few questions to come in, Finian. So I guess our poll, when we looked at this, these were kind of the concerns that people were experiencing. So what is the biggest challenge you've experienced in delivering effective remote access to your team at short notice? Any surprises there from what you're seeing? Have you seen any trends? Because we've run this poll for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the view there that, what strikes me is that security is so low on it kind of thing. And I think what we're hearing out in the market right now is that certainly from an IT professional point of view, security is front of mind. But the reality is that the noise out there from an end user point of view and from the people who are actually doing the work and I suppose keeping the business afloat is that they just want a seamless experience, and that often that they're struggling to do that. They haven't been able to work effectively remotely I've alluded to that throughout the presentation, that they haven't got the same setup, they're not getting the same experience. So those demands and certainly those calls back to help desk to say I'm having issues, I need a password reset, this application isn't working, they're the noise factor that is coming into the business. So security has been put on the back burner to a certain degree, and it's to a certain degree that's concerning. And I know many IT professionals would share this as well, is that we have a scenario where the business has to really strike a hard balance between keeping that business continuity, making sure the wheels are turning and that revenue is coming in from the business point of view, versus that overall governance and compliance piece around security, and putting that on the back burner, heads and tails over just the day-to-day management. So yeah, some interesting approach there, but it's certainly in our conversations with customers that the headache that the core IT team have around just supporting people, not only in remote access, but also with a lot of those legacy applications, is huge. And often when they want to start enhancing the business, moving areas forward, the likes of security, they can't do it because they simply don't have the bandwidth, they simply don't have the time, because of that unnecessary support burden. So, where Windows Virtual Desktop has taken off is really around eliminating a lot of those traditional IT support tasks, and all of a sudden the IT team finding that actually with much more bandwidth here, we can actually start to think about security and much more improvement across the business.
Yeah, an element of the squeaking wheel getting oiled, but maybe to detriment as well. Just to kind of it kind of leads into another question. I guess we've had clients now onboard onto Windows Virtual Desktop. Are there any interesting edge cases or use cases that you're seeing out there, just to maybe shed some light on for our audience listening in?
Yeah, the key ones, I suppose maybe it's probably 3 or 4 key conversations that we see coming up again and again right now. First is clients with the legacy infrastructure. Simply put, they've no interest in investing in on-premise. They don't want to have that risk of a high capital expense right now, and they want to move to a complete operational expense model to say, well, actually, I want to now have the ability to scale up and down as my business scales up and down. That's been the classic I suppose line that cloud has offered for a long time. But I think Windows Virtual Desktop is the first time it's actually really been able to deliver on that, deliver a true scalable model that is relevant to all businesses. Looking at some of the other cases, we've seen certainly finance teams, end of month scenarios where they're running high volume of reports, and that traditionally they've struggled with. I've heard so many times over the last number of months where people say, yeah, at the end of the month, I'm in on a Friday, I'm typically in late, I may have to go in over the weekend as well, just to check in on the report running. So we see Windows Virtual Desktop actually been rolled out for a very small subset of users. There's been a couple of scenarios where we've rolled this out for 5 or 6 users just on a core team. Even though the business may have a couple of hundred staff, Windows Virtual Desktop has just been rolled out for 5 or 6 key users, because we want to deliver a high-end performance application or machine to them on demand, specifically on those end of month scenarios. So that's been one. The other scenario is, we've seen a few engineering scenarios where there's a lot of legacy applications, be it on modeling or building out costs, etc. And again, the nature of many engineering firms or firms involved in construction out there right now is that they're out on site with clients. Their team is spread across the country and need to be able to access these key line of business systems. And again, while those businesses that we're talking to may have a few hundred staff, it's actually only a very small subset that are adopting Windows Virtual Desktop. I think one of the more recent ones, we had 25 staff using a particular application, and Windows Virtual Desktop was being rolled out for that application and those staff. But the business still has the vision that actually, that's one application that's a huge headache taken off not only the IT team, but now we have a better experience for our end user. And from there, we're going to look at the next application, the next team. So a very gradual approach to adopt it is really what's appearing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I see a couple of people from public sector background coming in on this webinar today. So that's certainly interesting, is that it's not a across the department kind of rollout. It can start small, start in a small group, start with a single application, and test it and measure thereafter. So certainly has the agility that maybe digital transformation requires sometimes. So I'm not seeing too many questions. Either you've answered them all, or people are a little bit shy. So just ask anyone again if you do want to get any questions in. That's absolutely fine. We're happy to answer them. I suppose following on from this, we're going to have a quick survey after the webinar. So it'd be great if people could get their answers in on that. We'll be running these webinars, different variations over the next few weeks. We'll keep you up to date on our mailing list for some of the other content that's coming up. And if you have any feedback for us or for me or for Finian, please do let us know in the comment section in the survey. We allow just kind of open feedback there. So if there's anything you need to see or anything that ActionPoint can provide, because I suppose it's a message I kind of bang drum on a lot, but we're here to help. And we want to make sure our content is responsive to customer needs as well. So please do let us know. Finian, have you any closing points before we finish up today?
No, I think that's it. I suppose really the message on our side is get in touch. The fact that we have those offers around the POC right now, now is a good time to start with your first application. The Azure piece is free, so it makes sense for a lot of businesses to test this out, see how it works, and to open up that conversation as to actually what's the real business impact here? How do we start to free up time from an IT point of view and ultimately address many of those issues that end users have had while remote working? So yeah, reach out to us today and we can discuss your first POC with you.
Excellent. Finian, thanks a million as ever. Brilliant, another great webinar. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We know you take some time out to listen to us talk about Windows Virtual Desktop today. That's it from us until next time, and we will see you again soon. Take care. Bye bye.